Before we leave Shimada, here's a quick look at the decor of our guest house. The curtain, called Noren, features illustrations of each member on the front. There's some seasonal decorations on the wall, some felt host characters to welcome guests as they enter, and a cheeky reverse illustration to the back of the Noren curtain. It was a nice touch how the host added this personal flavour in the genkan, or entrance, to the house.
Time to load the bags onto our bikes, a process we'd become very familiar with, but were still not entirely proficient at yet. There always seemed to be one bag we put on too early, or a strap that got in the way, requiring a reset and starting again. But that's all part of the fun.
Goodbye, Oi no Watashi. On to Fukuroi. Arigatou gozaimasu. Hai, etakimasu. Hai. Got it? I think this is a bit less steep than the other one. Maybe. The grip's better.
We were immediately met with an overbridge across the main rail track, but again the infrastructure smoothly facilitated our passage.
We continued through to the riverbank of the Oi River, the namesake of our accommodation, I presume. It's always a pleasure reaching these spaces away from city centres filled with greenery and longer viewing distances than usual. It would soon become the norm today, as our route would wind through the 20-kilometre maze of hills separating Shimada and Kakagawa.
Our first stop was fast approaching and would facilitate our exit from Shimada. This is the Fukuroi Bridge, which has a very interesting claim to fame.
We've just left the hostel in Shimada and we've done a 10-minute bike ride down to the Oi River and here at the Fukuroi Bridge.
The bridge was first built in 1879 and at 197 metres long, it is the longest wooden pedestrian bridge in the world.
Prior to construction, the ruling Tokugawa shogunate forbade the construction of any bridge or ferry service for defensive purposes, forcing travellers to cross the river on foot. Being on the Tokaido, this often caused major disruptions when the river was impassable. Following the Meiji Restoration, former samurai loyal to the Tokugawa clan settled permanently in the nearby area and began farming tea plantations.
Katsu Kaishu, an important figure in the Meiji Restoration, relocated nearby and oversaw the construction of the bridge to facilitate the growing farming industry. In 1965, its wooden piles were replaced by concrete, but its wooden top was retained. This was to ensure safety during major floods.
To me, it puts a major asterisk on the claim that it is the longest wooden pedestrian bridge. What's the ratio that tips the scales? It looks like we weren't the first to take bikes over. The bridge even came with a cafe and gift shop. I got an ice cream, and Gwen opted for a vending machine refreshment, a convenience we had begun using far more often.
We bought our tickets to cross, 100 yen each and 100 yen for the bikes. It was a little confusing, but we worked it out.
And then, it was time to cross. Enjoy the montage as we walk our bikes across the bridge and take in the lovely scenery, albeit at a slower pace than usual. finally made it, 897 metres across the Oi River, but we had no idea what was about to happen next.
Coming up is 2.5 minutes of us attempting to chat to Aitaro Hisakaru, who congratulates and rewards all the visitors who cross the bridge, including a personalised post on his Instagram account. Feel free to pause and view the post he made for us.
英語じゃなくてどれ？こっちか。
はい、オーストラリア。
日本一周をされてるんですか？
はい。はい。
はい。自転車。
渋谷。自転車九州。
九州まで。
九州。はい。
九州。
ありがとうございます。で、ちょっと待ってね。日本に住んでるんですか？
いえ。
いえ。
来日ね。
ニュージーランド。
はい。
どうして日本を選んだのですか？
あ
あ
あ。人、食べ物、and 眺め。
観光ね。はい。景色ね。ありがとうございます。お、じゃあちょっと待ってね。
はいはい。
ちょっとごめん、自転車置かれて。
はい。
新婚旅行という、まあ言うか。
写真？
じゃなくてね。これまずこれ。これを持って写真撮る。
ありがとうございます。
じゃあ写真撮ります。ちょっと待ってよ。どこ行った？いくよ。橋の上でも撮りましょうか。
Think I'll
A
picture
picture?
the bridge.
すぐそこ。
I think 大丈夫。
大丈夫？
We have already.
Already. Yeah.
はいはい。
Uh,
言ってくれれば。
This is Jade from New Zealand as a present for you.
え？あれ？まあ。ありがとう。サンキュー。
はい。
わお。そうなん。これどうしてこれ置くだけ？それとも何か紐で？
It was quite a steep exit up from the bridge, so we decided to push until we were out of sight of the tourists before regrouping and attempting the short climb.
We just crossed the Hodai Bridge, and at the other end there was a very cheerful guy who stopped us and wanted to know all about us, where we were from, why we chose to come to Japan, what we were doing here, and had a great conversation through Google Translate, which was fun. And he gave us some complimentary drinks. I chose grape soda.
And I chose rose cider.
Yeah, so some different kinds of soft drink to keep us quenched on our ride. And now we're just going to head up the bank on the other side of the river and start our way to Fukuroi. When we reached the top, it truly felt like the bridge had teleported us to a completely new environment, with rows and rows of tea plants as far as the eye can see. No wonder Shizuoka is so famous for it. This was actually quite unexpected, and the change in the landscape represented a milestone, the first major change we'd seen since departing Tokyo a week earlier.
There was a hypnotic peacefulness watching the long rows of tea plants flash by as we made our way east along what we thought was the top of the plateau, but was actually a steady 2-kilometre incline. We took a less than direct route, attempting to avoid the major roads, but to be honest, the traffic was so minimal it probably wasn't necessary.
What it did mean was more winding roads and probably some more captivating scenery. Exactly what we came for.
We rewarded our efforts with a konbini break, and prepared to scope out something else which we were hoping to see, a presumably original cobblestone section of the Tokaido route. But the descent and required ascent back made us reconsider.
What do you think? Do you want to go down?
I'm less convinced now, because it's like a steep grade down,
Yeah.
which means we have to come back up. It's nice view though.
Our plan to turn off to the Tokaido cobblestones didn't quite work. It's quite far downhill, but we're going to turn around and go to a castle ruins instead, which should be pretty cool. And we also got this awesome view to look at in the meantime. Well, here we are on the road to the castle, but as we were coming along, we noticed on the right side of the road, it's the top of the pathway that has the cobblestones of the old Tokaido. How's that for serendipity? According to the information board, my hopes of the path being original were sadly, but not surprisingly, incorrect, as sometime in the past it was concreted, and then subsequently restored in 1991, with the help of 600 townspeople.
We only wandered a short way down the path, which quickly felt like a different world compared to the farming landscape.
Despite not being truly original, it is still noteworthy for being one of the 3 current places along the route with cobblestones like it would have been during the Edo period. Hopefully one day we can return and walk the entire section. We continued down the road and found ourselves at the site of the Suwahara Castle. Apparently this site is a favourite among Japanese castle fans, despite not actually having a castle building at all.
It's a proper archaeological site, with the main features being massive earthworks of moats and enclosures, which were actually very impressive. This is how it may have looked in the 1570s.
The castle was built to take advantage of excellent views over the Oi River and the adjacent Tokaido. Despite this, it was only occupied for less than 15 years, which makes the scale of the site even more remarkable.
We spent a good while wandering around trying to decode the maze of defences and building areas. The interpretation was pretty good, but it's all in Japanese.
In the classic style of a Japanese heritage site, one section has a small recreation of a castle wall and gate. Whilst the rock as a doorstop looks traditional, I'm not sure the concrete or metal railings are supposed to be historically accurate, however.
Back when the castle was in use, this little footbridge was actually across a complete gap in the moat, much like a drawbridge to slow would-be attackers.
One of the standout features of the site was the incredible view back towards Shimada and the Fukuroi Bridge. A great opportunity to pause and say goodbye before we moved onwards in our journey.
The next leg of today's ride was probably the most spontaneous of the entire trip so far, with hilly terrain and a multitude of potential roads available. Our main goal was to reduce steep climbs. The next was to avoid major roads, and considering those, the third was to choose the fastest option.
After another late start and several stops, it meant we were well into the afternoon, and we still had 40 kilometres to ride, so time was of the essence. This meant taking what looks like a very inefficient route on the map, but it meant that instead of riding 7 kilometres with a 2.5 kilometre climb at an average of 10% gradient, we rode a far more enjoyable 13 kilometres of mostly descent, with a few little uphills along the way.
I only pushed once. With our hill diversion complete, we joined the busier Tokaido Road, with a great separated footpath which allowed bikes. Only 14 kilometres to Fukuroi, but first it's time for a konbini stop.
We were now headed into the town of Kakagawa, and decided to turn off the hustle and bustle of the main road for my favourite type of cycle path, a canal. It's so fun to explore these areas beside waterways, which often provide a scenic yet secluded shortcut through the networks of streets. The downside is that sometimes the path will suddenly end, or the exit is slightly more challenging than expected, but that's just part of the fun. The challenging stairs where you can get up the side, but you have to push through the top. Oh, yep, done. Can Gwen do it? It's quite steep. Nicely done.
In spring, these paths are particularly pretty, as many of them are lined with sakura. Japan does canal and riverside roads very well, so there's no shortage of options in any city for a more scenic ride. The glowing sun streaming through the sakura was truly magical, one of the perks of cycling late into the day.
Kakagawa actually has a quite magnificent castle, which you'll see in an upcoming shot. It was the first to be faithfully restored using traditional methods after it fell into disrepair during the Meiji period. Unfortunately, we didn't know about this during the ride, but we had other places to get to anyway. Despite this, we did stop momentarily to take in the atmosphere during a quintessential Japanese experience, the 5 PM chime, which we were becoming increasingly familiar with. We continued along the Sakusa and Haranoya rivers towards Fukuroi. It was incredibly peaceful, with very few other people using the river paths compared with the larger cities we had been through. It was almost eerie, but the warm sun kept us feeling positive.
We did see the occasional person tending to their allotment, and a skate park was comparatively busy, but we began to feel quite small in this vast river landscape with little development around.
Sometimes taking the scenic route was to our detriment, with this pavement making us feel somewhat in the wrong place. Oh, bumpy. Oh my gosh. Did not consider this. This concept was truer than we realised, as the riverside path continued to narrow until it completely stopped, and we had to push our bikes up onto the top of the bank to continue on our way. Yeah, not sure if we took the best route.
Despite this short navigational mishap, we were ejected from the river right into Fukuroi. We enjoyed a nice wide road shoulder as we skirted the city in order to find a particular shop to top up some supplies before we made camp for the night.
This is Fen, or at least I presume it's pronounced in the Nordic way. The letters are also the cardinal points of the compass, despite their logo not placing them in that order. Go figure. Sven is a large camping goods store. Think of Kathmandu or Macpac for the southern hemisphere folk. The store was incredibly well stocked with anything you could imagine to make your wildest camping dreams come true. After a short while browsing the aisles, we found what we were looking for, another gas stove canister. They had probably the best selection I've ever seen in a shop, so we made our pick and headed off towards camp for the night. Darkness fell quickly, but we had also briefly stopped for some groceries. We had two options for camping, but decided the closer one was best, despite not being our original preference. You're doing great, babe. Welcome to our camp park for the night. It's not quite the one we expected. We took a bit more time on the ride today looking at the Hot Eye Bridge and the castle ruins, but hey, this is a pretty good option. We cut the ride short by about an hour. Light was fading, obviously, so this was our backup. It's got a toilet. It's pretty well lit, so we can get set up in relative light, and there is also park benches and a bit of privacy behind those screens, so I'm sure we can find a good spot. Thanks so much for watching this day's journey. If you've liked it, please subscribe and also like the video. We'll catch you tomorrow. See ya.